My mom taught me to sell at a spaza shop. She ran a hair salon. I pretty much learned entrepreneurship from my moms.
Umntu ngumntu ngabantu. That on your own, you can't really do it. You need the support of those around you.
You will have a network of people, a network of communities, and a society that will make sure that you count.
Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, and it's my pleasure to say good evening and welcome to another issue of Saita Straight Talk. Saita Straight Talk is a series of panel discussions that is powered by the South African Informal Traders Alliance. My name is Louise, and as usual, it is my pleasure to introduce to you a panel of specialists, and we address, we interrogate, we celebrate, and sometimes we just shoot down all of the important issues that affects the informal trading sector. Tonight, I want to welcome again Brad Fisher from the SDI. Hello, Brad.
Hi, thank you very much, Louise. Thanks for having us again.
New to the panel this evening, Andile Ramaphosa. Good evening and welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening to everyone at home.
Bandla, you were with us last week in our session. Welcome and thank you for your time again.
Thank you, Louise, and thank you for the opportunity.
And last, but certainly not least on our panel this evening, our National President of the South African Informal Traders Alliance, Madam Rashida Muller. Good evening.
Good evening, Louise, and all the other panelists. And I'm sure this is going to be quite an exciting evening. And also, I would like to welcome all the listeners and viewers onto our Straight Talk Facebook page.
Rashida, won't you start off by setting the scene and telling our viewers and our listeners who and what is this Saita that we are so excited about?
Yes, indeed. Saita is the South African Informal Traders Alliance. It is an alliance of all 9 provinces where Saita has their provincial structures in. So Saita is a national movement which is the voice of the voiceless. It's the voice of the informal sector workers. And we are proud to say that we are the recognized body by national, provincial, and local governments of voicing not only the challenges, but also, sitting with government at all spheres. And, we do have 3 spheres of government, that we engage them on all the issues and all the matters that concerns our vulnerable workers. We are probably, arguably, the biggest business sector, although we are micro. Our numbers as per SA stats is close to 4.5 million informal traders in South Africa. It is Saita's objective to engage and bring on board all these informal traders, all these informal businesses, so that they would know that there is a mother structure, a united body that will protect and work with them. As we say, nothing about us without us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rashida. So we started the conversation about the Bbbee codes last week. And in my introduction, I referred to the fact that there's so little of it known within the informal sector because it really has no relevance. Although in a very, very weird way, it has absolute relevance because Bbbee as it is right now is really excluding a huge part of the economy of South Africa. So Andile, I'm going to direct my first question at you, and I'd like to ask you, so why is it suddenly such a burning point? It's been around for so long. So why is it suddenly something that we need to consider?
Yeah. Thank you, Louise, for that. And once again, thanks for inviting us. Definitely, the Bbbee codes is something that we need to continuously evolve, continuously change as a country. The codes are there to act as a lever between small business and big business, and to really get the scales balanced in South Africa, and to produce a more equal society. It's something that's supposed to be evolving. We want to see it evolve. I think that's what this conversation is about. We want to see it be more relevant to the informal sector, to your point, and to the small businessman in the street, and to see big business actually coming in that space. And just before I move past it, why is it so important, you'd ask? If you compare South Africa to, let's say, BRICS nations, you take a Brazil or even a China, you compare us to the US and those markets, developed markets, more than 70% of the work that's being done is being done by small businesses. You see it every day when you watch your favorite TV show later tonight. Observe which businesses are being pulled into a big business to do the cleaning, to do the gardening, to do the food. It's always a small business, without even affecting the fact that you've got IBMs and Apples and all these big companies coming out of countries like that. Compared to our peers, who are at about a 50% contribution, we're at a dismal 29%. It's terrible. We just don't do business with the informal sector as big business, as government. And that has to change. And we've seen it in the last few months. What happens when you don't engage the smallest man in the street, when you don't take care of small business, when you don't grow the middle economy? You're going to have unrest, you're going to have unemployment, and you're going to have a recession in terms of your economic growth. So thank you.
Bandla, as the head of Business Incubator, how does what Andile has just said resonate with the idea of taking a small business, growing it and sustaining it, keeping in mind that there is also the recommendation R204, where globally there's a need to make informal businesses more formal?
Let me make two examples. One, in a developed nation like America, you have a Silicon Valley where they've taken and believe in their own, such that they pump in the needed resources to develop their thinking and their ideas for the now and the future as well. Now, that is at an extreme level, and it's at opposite end because it's futuristic, it's AI. But as a model, in terms of incubation, you see that even though they are forward thinking and already at a point where they are advanced than a third world nation like South Africa, for example, or a developing nation like South Africa, we don't have that thinking of incubating our own businesses, our own thinking. I think it goes far beyond just incubation, but also starting to believe in our own, because we have a belief or a system where we bring things into the country and do not have a belief system of taking our own and making it, packaging it such and bringing it to the world. So we believe in other people, we believe in other ethnic groups rather than our own. So it starts with believing ourselves or in ourselves first, incubate what we have, make it into world class by bringing structure into what we have so that it is compatible to what is happening in the world in a global economic sense. So from my point of view, I latch on to what Andile is saying from a point that first world nations and nations in general believe in their own and package their own. We need to start doing that. I know there was endeavors on that part with Brand South Africa, but we need more in line with that to grow our own brands and our own products.
Brad, from an SDI point of view, what are the challenges that you see in terms of bringing those two together, from the codes to the informal? What needs to happen?
Okay, so ideally, if you could close the loop. So let me explain by way of a practical example. There you've got Sandton area in Johannesburg, and across the highway you've got Alex. And that's not a unique situation in South Africa. You've got plenty places around the country, Cape Town included, where you've got this huge discrepancy in wealth in close proximity. It's more difficult when there's further proximity, but there's also ways around that. And yet you have very little support of big business doing business with small business in Alex, if at all. Now, the solution that would not work is to just simply force big business in Sandton just to spend money, to look small and spend money alone into micro. It certainly would help, because at the moment the codes are structured that big business can actually put, to satisfy their BE requirements, can put money into businesses that are doing less than 50 million rand turnover and still get what's known as enterprise development points, which unfortunately doesn't then mean that the businesses, the big business, the big bank is forced to look micro, but it goes beyond that. Even if you could convince the big bank in Sandton to invest in scooter drivers that happen to reside in Alex, and that could now provide a very valuable service as the economy goes with COVID and as everyone's ordering things online, it's no use just to throw money at scooter drivers in Alex. Of course, you've got to skill them up and you've got to get their licenses. Of course, you've got to give them some basic education, which they do. There's a certain amount of skills development that is happening, even at a micro level, not enough. The most critical part of it is it should actually start with the Sandton business committing to doing a certain amount of work with a certain number of scooter drivers in Alex. Start with the order. Andile and I were talking, we've got this, I think I'll let Andile give the fisherman, give a man a fishing rod example. He needs to go further than just teaching. You don't just give a person, I'm just going to jump into it, you don't just give a person a fishing rod, the whole thing, give a man a fishing or person a fishing rod and teach him how to fish rather than to fish. No, in this country, you've got to go further. You've got to give that person the order. You've got to give that person the ability to sell their fish that they caught with their lovely new fishing boat and fishing rod and all the skills. You've got to give them a chance to provide the canteen in the city, in the Sandton. There are so many opportunities. Just today, I heard of someone setting up a platform for growing snails. Now, it's all good and well throwing money at people in Alex to grow snails. But until you get serious industry in Sandton, buying the snails from the micro traders in Alex rather than importing it to put in polony and all sorts of other things, the person will still sit in Alex growing snails with nowhere to sell it to. So you need a virtuous circle, and you need the codes to support this. You need the codes it shouldn't really be force. It's the right thing to do. And I would argue it makes business sense, because my view is the micro trader can beat the big business in terms of service. Why? Because it's their own business. They're motivated. South Africans are excellent entrepreneurs, often better into an entrepreneurial environment than when they work at a big business. So the Alex-based person who's got a truck that's doing removals as opposed to Imperial Logistics would probably do a better job of moving, and we tried this with Andile, moving his furniture from our office to his house. They'll do it cheaper, they'll do it more efficiently with a smile on their face, but they'll never get Andile to do the work. Why? Because of the stigma. But it's a small business, it's my house, my wife's going to jump on my head, which was quite a hard thing to get Andile around. But what a platform does is it gives a credibility. Who would have allowed an Uber driver to fetch an overseas, or a taxi driver to fetch an overseas guest 20 years ago, but you would now? So what I'm saying is, if you can now get the codes to support what we can do, we can take people in Alex, we can skill them up, we can get basic equipment to them, whether it's cleaning equipment or a scooter or an IT support background. We can put them on platforms so that they're aggregated and there's a trust. The missing ingredients, corporates are not giving them business. The codes are not requiring, under preferential procurement, thinking small. Our whole slogan is empowering big business to think small and small business to think big. But it would be very helpful if the codes would just insist that a certain amount of spend has got to go to the informal sector, and a certain amount of investment and skills development must go right down to the informal sector. So I've gone with a long answer, but I hope it helps.
Thank you, Brad. It's so amazing that as the Saita Straight Talk series sessions go on, there are certain buzz phrases that sort of rises up. So before last week, political will was the one phrase that kept on coming up as we're talking about the informal trading sector and what we need. And suddenly over the last 2 weeks, it's preferential procurement. Now, before I come to you, Andile, because I really want to tap some more out of you in terms of this, I just want to go to Rashida, because Rashida, besides being the leader of this movement and making sure that there's a voice to the sector, you are an informal trader yourself. So there's a practical component that I want to exhibit here. What would preferential procurement mean to your business? If would you then be able to get to a 50 million rand a year turnover if you had that?
Wow. 1 million is even difficult.
Yes.
But I'm glad we're talking about this tonight. And I'm glad that Saita, with its EDF, has the campaign of bridging the gap. And that is what we want to do. And what we're talking about tonight is that the corporate sector needs to invest in the micro businesses. And tonight as well, we want to invite everyone to an exhibition fashion show that we are hosting on the 16th of October, if you're in Cape Town, at the Athlone Civic. We are having 12 informal sector clothing designers on the ramp. And we are going to exhibit, including mine, may I say, I'm a clothing manufacturer, including my production as well, my style, my design. We are going to showcase to the press, to some corporate businesses that's there, what we can deliver. Now, what we must realize as small and micro businesses is our collective action. I might not be able to produce 50,000 garments in 1 month. But if you put 20, 30 of small manufacturers together, we are able to.
Exactly.
And that is what Saita is about, is bringing the voice of the micro sector together, looking at the development of sectors, whether it is the clothing and textile, whether it is the agriculture, the fruit and veg, or any of the other sectors that we work with. We need to ensure that government puts some form of incentives for big business to invest. And do they need the incentive? I don't know. But for them to invest in us, but we as Saita need to present to them the worth, the skill, and what we can deliver. Of course, much more needs to be done. As Comrade Bandla has explained, that, we have to upskill, we have to develop, we need to take them into the hubs. But we are ready and we're growing. And with the assistance of your organization too, I'm sure we can reach our goals.
Thank you, Rashida. Andile, now to ask you the pie in the sky question.
Yes.
And that is, so we know that we want the triple BEE codes to be changed. We don't necessarily want to incentivize big business to do that, because they are big business after all, but if we have to, we will. But how easy is it for this to happen?
Okay. Thanks for that, Louise. And Madam President, you have me jumping out of my pants when you're talking. I'm so excited about the things you're saying. And I encourage people to go to the fashion show and to engage with you further. And Banda, I want to touch on something as well. When you talked about AI and technology, that's something that we see as a solution towards assisting formalize the informal sector. But let's discuss willingness, okay? I can tell you that between Brad and myself as SDI, we've been around the block. We've been to all the major players, stakeholders in the country, whether it's government or business South Africa. We've been fortunate enough that they've heard us, and generally, no one's closed the door. Everyone agrees we must do business with the informal sector. But the one thing that was always underlying the whole thing was, firstly, it's too difficult. And quite frankly, we don't accept that as an answer. You can formalize the informal sector and aggregate them. In the words of Madam President, you can aggregate across orders a lot of small businesses to fulfill an order for an Edgar's or a Mont Blanc, which funny enough is a South African brand, part of a South African company. There should be no reason that can't happen. Technology these days has allowed us to move across that and to very quickly standardize products and to very quickly find suppliers as business and or government. But further to it, the bigger complication is, let's look at the budgets, right? And Banda will know more about this as well. The country has, on average, we did the statistic, about 35 billion rands worth of ED money, enterprise development money, from big business that's supposed to be invested in small businesses throughout the country. When you go to big business and you say, where are you putting this money? They say, oh, we are putting the money out. But the process of them putting money out typically goes in the hands of 2-3 SMMEs, small businesses, they say. When in fact, it could help a plethora of micro businesses rather than just assisting Andile grow his big black company. So the willingness to dive deeper is a little bit lacking, and we need to drive that, right? And second to it, I would argue, is the skills development. Let's look at that. There's over 100 billion rands of skills development available in the country. We did the statistics. We looked at it. I can tell you a couple of businesses off the top of my head. Standard Bank, Sasol, all have more than 2 billion rands worth of skills development spend that they have to put out the door every year, okay? Just to remain compliant. Our law has provided room for that already. The question is there a willingness to go and to actually go where it has maximum impact at the level of small business, the plumber, the Uber driver, the guy who needs assistance in terms of that. I think that's the question. And I would argue from our experience, what we've also noticed is not to criticize incubators too much. Incubators have the right room in a certain environment. To Babanda's point, you take the Silicon Valley of an incubator, that's great. We should have that. And in fact, we have it in a funny, different way because it caters to a minority of people. Arguably venture capital if there is in the country.
Yeah.
But at its larger level, right, if you were to look at it, incubation needs to also allow for the informal small businesses to be assisted through a platform like Saita, what you guys are working on as well. So from my side, I think that without addressing this problem, the politicians have realized that the country is going to be at risk. Big business, especially over the last couple of months, has realized we're at risk. So it's just a question of getting there practically. And it's more conversations like this and that'll get us there.
Brad, your hand is up.
Oh, yeah.
Just on Andilia's point of saying we've learned a few lessons in the last few months. The problem is people do learn lessons and then the pain seems to go away, not where the pain needs sorting, but where the willingness to help really needs to stay close to mind. So we've been through COVID, and you guys, Rashida, you'll tell me in your organization how much money of the COVID relief actually made its way down to the informal sector in terms of food relief. And I can talk firsthand. We had to crowdfund 10,000 food packs because there was none. How much money went to the waste picker, the street hawker, the mama that runs the tuck shop, the clothing manufacturer? Almost zero. The problem is the intention might be there, but when you open the door to this lovely word SMME, and suddenly 500 million arrives at the SASME fund and goes out the door in 4 days to say 15,000 jobs, but that's 300 businesses. And not 1 cent gets to the 4 billion that you spoke of, when we opened the show. Something's wrong. And what's wrong is the definition of an SMME. Leave an SMME, and that's fine. They need support. I'm not saying they don't. But you need to, you're the unseen economy. You need to be seen. And the way you are seen is when the code says to achieve your scorecard, don't hand it in unless you've put X amount to the micro, informal business owner, which is somebody doing less than 100 or 200,000 turnover a year, not 50 million. So we can go back to that clothing example. Andile, or I think Louisa said to you, Rashida, if you got an order, could you handle a 50 million rand order? And my answer is, I believe you could, but there's even a better answer. You could be an enabler of 100 small traders to win that order. So if we heard, this is what typically happens. Andile and I will hear that the SPA wants to do uniforms for the next 3 years. What happens is, Brad, Louisa, and Andile go into a business. You guys are, by the definitions, we're 51% black owned. And we set up a bloody manufacturing thing, and we get the deal. And we work out, because we've had the experience of all the years and the bank funding, we get the deal. So one bunch of people that don't really need the help get uplifted. If we went to someone like you, Rashida, and said, right, you can get the deal over the next 3 years, doing more and more work to do all uniforms for SPA. But what we want you to do is the 9 provinces where Saita operates, we want you to appoint in each province 5 people that will handle the SPA group clothing in the area, decentralized. And what we want you to be is the Uber, the enabler. You can take 20% and you can make good money out of it. Good luck to you. No one becries you of that. But it's underpinned by micro people. Then you can throw in SPA's training budget to skill up those 100 people that they can make great, working clothes. And what will happen at the end of 3 years is you'll have 100 people that can now go to McDonald's, because we can speak to the McDonald's, but what would help us is if McDonald's was compelled and SPA was compelled to look small. At the moment, the get out of jail card is they'll deal with Brad and Andile. Imagine that. Andile 51% black owned, Brad 49%. In our first or second year of business, we're not yet doing 50 million rand. We get the 16 million rand order. They should be compelled, if they want to spend it with someone that's got to be an enabler like you, that's broad-based with micro guys, with a progression of skills, starting off with a small manufacturing for uniforms, which is simpler, and graduating up into the more complex fashion items. And then that billions that Andile talked about, skills, is not being thrown at lawyers, accountants, things that more and more IT support, things that companies can't use anyway. It's now getting trained for people that have got orders. But to do all of this, it's too difficult without the support. We need companies like organizations like Saita to shout loud to the powers that be, big business and the powers that be, that unless they're serious, when they talk about, I must be very careful here not to get political, but people talk about build back better, inclusive growth, EFF, economic freedom fight, transfer of wealth, radical economic transfer. I'm all for it. Where's the plan? And we've got a code, and there is a plan. The plan is that, say, under COVID conditions, immediately with immediate effect, to transfer some of the economy down to the bottom. The codes are changing from the 1st of November. And at least 20% going up to 50% must be spent on micro in terms of investment and skills, and X% must be spent on procurement, which is more difficult, admittedly. More work needs to be done on it. You can be reasonable on it, but you've got to go for it. And the answers we've been given, and it might be difficult for you maybe to answer this, but some of the answers we've received are unforgivable. Like, that's going to be, well, I'll let Andile answer it firsthand. What the answers are, why they're not doing it.
I was going to. Sorry, Andile. Before you go there, and Madam Rashida, I will give you your opportunity. I note your hand, but Brad, you mentioned the word. You don't want to get political, but Andile, unfortunately, with a surname like Ramaphosa, we're gonna get political. So why would you fight this good fight? And why? Where's the credibility in it? Because I hear you, I feel you, But I want to know what has the resistance really been, and how are we going to change this in a meaningful way?
Do you want me to answer before, Madam President?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you, Louise. So, okay, let's look at it very practically, quite simply. The way the codes have been designed, the original design of it was to basically get as many what would be super wealthy Black people into position. And we've achieved that, I can tell you for a fact. I'm a beneficiary, I know. So a lot of Black people were moved into big corporates, being given equity, being given position, all of that. That was fine for those days, 20 years ago. But our country has evolved since then. And unfortunately, the codes have not evolved quick enough with that agenda. And that's the big issue underlying it. What happened as well is that systematically, with the budgets that we spoke about, you've got a lot of corporates that have actually benefited out of this whole process. Okay, you've got massive fund managers that are now managing these funds. You've got, so there's a lot of collusion between the let's say the people that are interested in seeing the code move forward. The people that are responsible for moving the code forward, and the people that are actually responsible for delivering on what the code says we must do with big business. That is actually what is fundamentally creating a problem. So to break that, we obviously have to deal with the political issue. That's true. But most importantly, we actually have to unite. In the words of Madam President, you have to unite the informal sector and say, we are here, put our hand up and say, we can trade with you today. Here is the platform, okay? Rashida Inc., have got a platform. I've got 1,000 of these traders throughout the country. They're in Alex, they're in Bloemfontein. They're all manufacturing gowns. You guys want to buy PPE, let's call it masks, right? That entire thing should have been localized completely, in fact. And we should have seen a plethora of businesses, small businesses coming out of there, hitting the 1 millions, 2 millions, getting up to the 50 millions, just based purely on demand. So I would argue that there is a fundamental thing in there that's broken. And in the words of Babanda, we have to have, we need to apply the intelligence that this country has. We need to apply the intellectual capital that this country has towards resolving this problem. We have the entrepreneurs. We've created massive billionaires, US billionaires out of this country, all right? So I think we just need to get back to that as a country.
Rashida, your hand was up. Brad, I'll give you a chance next.
Yes, thank you. You know, I am an activist. And when something is said, I want to roll it out. So tonight we're speaking. We're speaking about what can be done. So what Saita can do is, Saita can pull, for example, and that's only one industry, not because I'm in it, but because I've been there so long. We could possibly pull 100 clothing manufacturers out of each province. We have 9 provinces. Or even if it's less, let's write that proposal. Let's find that the hospital wear, the spa uniforms, the Pick and Pay uniforms. Let us start with something, even if they decline our proposal. Never give up. We will push on and push on. But by us talking and not putting a time frame in place after this meeting and saying that we are calling upon the clothing manufacturers of Saita, that we are going to put in a proposal to do the hospital gear, the linen, that's such easy work also. We must implement what we're talking about. We cannot just talk and say this and that. We as Saita must draft the proposal and with our supporting partners, deliver that. And let's see how we can, through government's assistance, as well as the corporate willingness to bring us on board, even if the order is small, even if it's a small order in one province, yes, we can take a pilot and we can see how can we deliver. I'm finished talking, this is the last lap of my life. I've worked 30 years to come to a national structure. And I'm proud to sit here today because it has been my lifelong, dream to see the one voice of the informal sector. So yes, let's get on with it. Let's move with that proposal.
Let's
Thank
move
you.
with that proposal. Thank you, Madam President. Brad, your hand was up.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you asked quite a hard question of Andile, and people have said the same thing to me. People say, but doesn't stack up. It's not viable that you guys, if you had such a good proposal and it was relatively simple to change, surely, there would be an opportunity for Andile to put it to the powers that be. Let me explain why it is so important that we've got a collaboration now with Saita. I can tell you firsthand, there are Chinese walls in the structure in Andile's life, and those walls don't get broken down. And Andile, if he tried it on to go over that wall and speak directly to number one, would be told there are channels. And we must follow the channels. And when we try and follow the channels, because there's always this, it's actually baggage of this politically affected person, it's actually often more difficult. So we have been to the DTIs and to the Bbbee commissions and to the Business for South Africas and to the B4SAs during COVID. And we've even had them presenting our case to us. I've been to the guys writing the sector codes, but there's surprisingly enough only so much we can do, and we get tripped up in complexity. Yes. So Saita should take this thing on, because if the codes were in place and Rashida put in place that very good idea of 9 provinces empowering 100 clothing manufacturers to start with the big companies on something simple, like it can be start with linen, and you know what I'm talking about, the basic stuff, and then we can evolve that model. If the codes changed, once there's something working, the big money will follow. And once you've got a repeatable model, South Africans will come through. We are great. Our small guys are great entrepreneurs. So I've also for 30 years had this vision of business driving, business for the sake of making a profit, like Rashida, but driving, sorry, Andile, let Andile answer. Sorry.
No, continue, Brad.
No, I'm finished. That's
all
also
right. I think I'll pick up on that point.
You carry on.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Brad. So what you were saying, and that's what we've been working on together, Brad, is we call it adopt a project, or that's the approach. And we've seen it, I'll tell you, in spaces that are interesting. In sports, we've seen it. And what is that approach? What we're saying is, once you get the proximity of Alex closer to Santa, there will be a very natural trade environment that will occur, right? But you need to first create an infrastructure for that to happen. And that's why we're talking to you, because we can't bear that infrastructure, because, of course, I bring in lots of challenges that Brad has mentioned. But we understand what is actually quite interestingly, what the problem is with the procurement side. That's where the magic is. It's sitting with procurement officers, plugging into the procurement processes and getting it streamlined in such a way that small businesses can very easily respond to a purchase order, or very easily respond to a tender, let's say, for instance, but at a mass level. So for us, this conversation, Madam President, is about a practical way forward, actually. We've been there, we've raised money, we've invested money in SMMEs, we've seen them succeed. I mean, Brad and I can talk all day about the successes that we've seen through small businesses getting investment, but where we've always had a grudge is with big business buying from them, and that's the big fight for us. Thanks, Brad. I hope I assisted you there. Sorry to disturb.
Bandla, your hand was up.
Yes, thanks, Andile, and thanks, Brad. Thanks, Madam President. I think I just want to touch on everyone's contribution. I just want to bring in the two spheres, one being the political side of things and also the business side. On the political front, we have what we call political heterogeneity, whereby parties are fighting within themselves. Why? Because parties have, and I'm not speaking here in terms of the leading party only, all the parties are in the pockets of the wealthy and those who own big business. So, for example, you would have a Rob Hetzoff who comes into the country and waves around money. And he has an agenda. It is political, but he's driving it through business. So he's able to call whatever party leadership to himself as a billionaire and start waving money and making things happen. So what does Saita then have as a problem is that a Saita alliance, which is an amalgamation of associations spread across the provinces, faces the multi-pronged approach of how do you deal with the politics within a sub-council to a province. Because a certain political party is within Khayelitsha in Cape Town, but the province is run by another political party, which will start to frustrate one another because politically they have an agenda. But this agenda directly impacts this topic tonight, which is informal traders. Because at a bylaw implementation policing point of view, there's going to be a political agenda to fight the other sub-council from delivering, because this political party mustn't be seen to be delivering. So with those politics at play, it impacts the delivery and agenda of a Saita. Because now Saita, instead of being focused with going to a Coca-Cola and saying, you guys have a growth strategy of 5% for 2021, 2022, or British American Tobacco, you have 10% growth. In fact, leave the growth. You want to fight illicit trading. How can we help you with that? We can't deal with those, because we need to deal with the person who's the trader has been taken their cart, it's been put impound, and you start to talk about the relationship with Vodacom, whereas I need my cart freed up, and we need to align with a law firm who's going to help us fight the bylaws that are being implemented unfairly. So Saita is sitting with that conundrum of politics, which are affecting where Saita on a business front could be making lucrative deals where Coca-Cola, you've got a 5% growth plan. We can grow by 5%. Why? We've got 4.5 constituency, which is our traders. This is how we propose to contribute to your 5%, 3% by this strategy in terms of sales. But you have illicit trading, we can stop illicit trading. How? Let's try, instead of being punitive, rather let's incentivize our people in terms of buying from you the correct cigarettes and selling the correct. So instead of focusing on an operating plan that speaks to the delivery and upliftment of small business, we are being kept. It's almost, when you are digging a tunnel or a hole, you don't see, you are just digging. You are looking down and digging, and even you're throwing this thing on yourself, because that is where politically we are being put, and strategically so by big business. And like Brad has said, and like you, Andile, has also said, that big business on a B scorecard, they'll take, we've done this. We've done this on our corporate social investment or social impact program. We have done this. Look here. Look at SARS. This is what we've submitted. We've done this. Here's our PBO certificates. We are doing this. But on an actual level, you are paying politicians as a corporate to frustrate the very market that you know, or sector that you know, is an answer to turning the economy, or at least even contribute to turning the economy. Thank you so much, Louise.
Thank you, Bandla. Andile, do you want to respond?
Well, firstly, I am 100% behind Comrade Bandla. You're absolutely on the money there. There are those fears, there are those challenges, but I think it's through collaboration that we will defeat this monster. And it's not the first time. We as South Africans have been fighting for a long time. The fight 24. We have to keep this fight up. I would argue that there are organizations like yourselves that can maneuver around, I would say, the political agendas, because you are apolitical. You are there for everyone. As far as I know, there's no party that has said they are not interested in assisting small businesses. So I think that you can go into that space and you can play that role. And I think you've already been doing it, as Madam President's been saying, for 30 years. Use us, like SDI, who are actually more focused towards driving investment from business, driving that agenda, and driving the agenda of, like I said, the skills development spend going in spaces, and also in particular the procurement, which is what we've all been going on about today. So that's our, if I was to say, our area of specialization. We're also very good at, Madam President, putting in place enablers, which is the term that we use for businesses that enable for SMMEs to trade and to trade through a platform. So we're good at that, and we've done it with a couple of interesting spaces, including green flags and wastepreneurs. So in response, I agree completely. There is a political part to it, but ultimately, what I feel personally is that actually beyond the politics, as a South African, and that was where we started this conversation, you have to be patriotic, whether you're a small business, a big business, or whether you're a politician. The interest of this country, this nation, is dependent on us fundamentally resolving this issue. We cannot continue status quo. COVID has shown us, if we look at how many small businesses got affected, we can't sit anymore and say tick box exercise, but I agree, that is no longer acceptable. And so from our side, we stand with you. We will fight this fight together. And what's interesting is, like you said, even big businesses realizing that if we don't do something, our beautiful malls will be littered. Our Edgars will be looted. All these things are hinged on the ability to involve, I would argue, 80% of South Africans into the formal economy. And we need to do that. We need to do it now.
Brad, your hand was up.
Yeah, so just Rashida said, time for talk is over. Let's talk practicality. Some of these things are highly scalable. Andile raised the point. What we need desperately are enablers. So Uber is the enabler of 20,000 small drivers that go onto a platform that you and I are prepared to contract with. We're trying to get more and more corporates to sign up to Uber Corporate. But if you took the informal sector, those 4 million people, some of them that are struggling, and you worked out in micro farming where the low-hanging fruit lay, and there's some very interesting things coming with hydroponics now and crazy things like growing snails for protein, for food, that gets fed to animals and that type of thing, which is going to get done. It's a growing industry, or farming things in the sea. They're called fish farms in the sea. There's going to be big business that shifts, even with this whole green thing and not wanting to do so much livestock, growing food, which big business is going to get their hands on. But why? Why can't we work out a way of taking a big whack of this informal sector and putting them onto some platform whereby big business could be the guys buying the Woolworths and the Pick and Pays and the Spars could start over time, once the platform proves itself, start actually buying from micro rather than buying from often big international food companies. So a lot of these things can be scalable. And we can follow international trends. So one thing where South Africa is strong is we've got a lot of land. We could be growing trees, but don't do it as a government thing, growing trees for offset carbon credits and some foreign exchange. Give, 10,000 micro traders a hectare of land or a bit of land, and let them each grow a few trees and have the whole thing managed with drones and a platform and technology. It's doable. And then you'll have a situation where 10,000 people are earning money, bringing in Forex, rather than one sappy doing it, and the money gets either just invested out of the country or doesn't hit the bottom. The multiplier effect of 10,000 people earning 5,000 to 10,000 a month, or compared to that same activity happening by Sappi, you can't compare the two. The one really makes a huge difference to the economy, and the other one doesn't. But Sappi is going to get that order unless we wake up. And okay, so that's my point.
Yeah, and I think, Brad, if I may add one last sentence on the end of that, and you used the word earlier. I think we've been skipping around it a bit, but I want to raise it now near the end. South Africans need to trust each other. Okay? We need to trust each other. We need to trust that if I buy a service, if I buy a product from a small business, it will be of quality. It will be better quality than even if I went to buy it from a big business somewhere, right? And that is our business. That's what we're in. We're in that business of creating trust between big business and small businesses, and working with yourselves who have the trust of all of these informal businesses that you mentioned earlier is critical stuff. So you've gone into a space where SDI might not be as effective, but through an effective partnership with you and working together and creating this trust with procurement managers, with investors, and trust with banks, right? How difficult is it to get a car loan versus getting a business loan, right? Talk about trust deficit. So this country, that is the fundamental problem.
No, I have to comment. You'll love this. I have to comment. He's so right. I know someone who's spoken to us about being an enabler for IT and systems development. They're a bunch of rocket scientists that have cracked a model where they go into Alex, they do talent competitions, and they pick people not based on their current skill level or their training or their level of education, on their aptitude. And then they go and pitch for big deals, but they know that they can do it relatively inexpensively because they pull the guys out of Alex, they put them in these sort of on-the-job mentorships. They won a contract, this group that I'm talking about, with about 100 guys from Alex. They won a contract, not in South Africa. This is the thing that's sickening about it. They won a contract in London for the London Thames to predict a program, an app, if you want to call it, to predict when the next leak and where it will spring up on the Thames. We won the contract. Fancy that. And these guys can't get into FNB, or let's not use banks' names, but apps of the big banks. That's crazy. We've got the talent. I'm telling you, if you went into Kalisha tomorrow and you said, I'm having a trouble with my IT, I think we discussed it last week, my phone, or I can't sync, or I can't print, those kids can do it. If they had the opportunity, but the trust needs to be there, because you're not going to let them just like, you need that trust. And that's what technology and platforms can give you. But it wouldn't harm that you guys could activate and get the law to help, because it's a carrot and a stick.
Brad, sorry, Louise, I just want to add on Brad and Andile, because they've touched something fundamental from our point of view. One is that, by and large, traders are an extension of corporate, because the products that they are trading is from corporate. I sell a Coca-Cola tin. It means, by and large, I am doing your sales. So by extension, it's not different to a security company at a corporate. They are, by extension, that. So the culture fit, it needs to work. Now, this is where the problem is. For us to assure culture fit, even from a point of view where, from a sales, we're selling what you manufacture in informal trading, and thus by extension we are not culture fit, because you're not ensuring as corporate that we are aligned in terms of how we look, how we perform business. You're not investing in that. That is far and beyond even starting where you and Andila are referring to, which is procurement. Now buy from me as informal trader. So for now, the leg that's working, even though it's not being taken care of, is that informal trading goes and buy from a macro, goes and buy from a supply chain, and by extension are what they sell. I sell Coke, by extension I'm Coca-Cola. I'm selling t-shirts, whatever the case may be, the brand. So from there on in, your argument, which you're stating, which I agree fully with, is procurement. Buy from us. If we are good enough to sell your products, we should be good enough to then you buying from us. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
53 minutes, and this conversation is not yet over, but I'm going to have to call it over for this evening. I'm going to give each one of our panelists an opportunity for their last words, and I'm going to start off with you, Bandla.
Okay, I want to thank this opportunity, because this is a healthy conversation. It's pushing us in the right direction. I think with this synergy and ways of working that we can establish, we'll really then hit on those bottlenecks that we find as Saita. Because at this point, it's not to say there aren't endeavors channeled in the space that SDI is bringing, but now at least we're going to have a concerted and focused approach with people who are subject matter experts, but also who have a networking in that space for us to open that bottleneck and make a flow in the form of getting procurement and also growing the sector and putting structure in the sector so that it is compatible to what is happening in the formal structure. So my passion is third world leadership. I'm passionate about third world leadership, and I believe in third world leadership. I believe in the informal economy, and I believe in the township economy. For me, that is my passion and what drives me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bandla. Brad, some final words from you. Now you've got to unmute yourself, Brad.
My apologies. You'd like to think that corporate South Africa, and I think by and large the intentions would be right. It's just sometimes the complexity in the actions. The carrot would be that we want to get our country right and we want to see this terrible discrepancy flatten out, level out. But unfortunately, there's got to be a carrot and a stick. And the stick's got to be a change in the regulation that does force corporates to think more carefully about, not think more carefully, to act more decisively about buying small. If we can start like that, the carrot will be South Africa is a winning nation. We've got a fantastic raw ingredient of entrepreneurialism and hard work and commitment on the ground. We just don't give our people a shot. If we can combine the rigors and the technology that we've got and some of the entrepreneurship that we've got with that, we can become a winning nation. So there's actually a carrot in it for everybody should be on the same page. Take the politics out of it. The rest of the world doesn't care. All they care of, do we produce a good service or product at a good price? If we can do a call center from Khayelitsha better than the guys because we speak the same language, we're in the same time zone as India, don't care about the politics. We must win as a nation, and we can. We just don't believe in ourselves. And unfortunately, the stick's got to come first. The regulations got to support this because the proof is in the pudding. Right through COVID, there was no real support from corporates, sorry to say. So it's a stick, but the carrot will come. It will be better for everybody.
Thank you, Brad. Andile, your last words, please.
Wow. I think everything has been said, but maybe I'll just go back to the international comparison and say, we're not asking for the impossible. Every other country that has been able to move significant amounts of people out of poverty into what is middle class, into formal sector, have gone through this path. Their governments have made a conscious decision that we are for our people and not paid lip service. They've acted on it and they've forced big business to make that adjustment. I spent years in China, 7 years in China. I'll give that as an example. A communist nation, they say. But I'll tell you, the government was effective in, for instance, moving the country into now being the top producer of locomotives around the world. And it started with small businesses, small projects, very basic manufacturing. And then now they're building high-speed railway and exporting it around the world. You have to make that fundamental move, to Brad's point. And then once you've hit the stick, the carrot comes in, because at the end of the day, when you get that culture, that link of procurement, buying from each other, working together, that Comrade Banda was talking about, that's when the economy starts growing. So it's in no one's interest not to work with the informal sector. How are we going to grow this country without them, right? So as a final word for me, I think that's important. And one last word to your members. I think they must continue to support you. We are behind you. We wish you well. We will continue to work together. And we want your members to grow stronger. And let's keep fighting for our small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Andile. And Madam President, final words from you, please.
Firstly, Louise, I want to thank you for this wonderful opportunity that we have on Straight Talk. And I want to thank each and every panelist for giving and making their time available tonight. It is in partnerships like this that we will definitely see growth and development. Remember, if we should have 1 million informal traders who are empowered and each one employs one person, we have created 1 million jobs. So to everyone out there, please join Saita. Oh, and let me not forget Comrade Paul, that on Thursday, Saita and COSATU is marching to the city of Cape Town to hand over a memorandum on decent work conditions. So we are all part of that. I'll be there and hope to see you there too if you're in Cape Town on Thursday, 10:30 from Keizersgracht. So with that, I want to wish you well. Join Saita. We are progressive. We are there for economic empowerment and development of the informal and micro businesses. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Rashida. And with those final words, it's my turn for the final words. I want to thank each of the panelists again for your time and your insights, especially, and your passion for the cause. Because I, like Bandla, I believe in what we are doing here, and I believe that this is the turn for South Africa if we look after the informal economy. Every Tuesday and Thursday evenings at 7 o'clock, it's your appointment with me on Saita Straight Talk. Please make sure that you follow and like the Saita Media Facebook page. We also have a Saita Straight Talk YouTube channel that has just started, so you can go back and view all the previous episodes. Do join us here every Tuesday and Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. We promise you some very, very interesting topics still lined up in the months to come right here on Saita Straight Talk. From me, Louise, goodbye.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, guys.